your business, your team will only grow as much as you're willing to grow, right? When you say,
That's great.
this is as far as I'm going, that's as far as your business is going to go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am so happy to have you here for this episode, as I am for every episode. It's fun and I love delivering for you. And I do want to remind you before we get started with today's guest that my new book, Ownership, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck, is available on Amazon. It's gotten tremendous support and reviews so far. And if you have any interest in checking out more of it, pick it up on Amazon. Write me a review if you like it. Send me an email if you don't, and we can talk about your experience with the book. So I'm very grateful to everyone who supported me, and I'm looking forward to touching a lot more people with the messages in that book. So let's move on to today's episode. And today, I have a tremendous entrepreneur and a tremendous leader for you, and I am fulfilling my promise to bring you amazing stories with Dale Walls. Dale, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so let me tell you why you need to be as excited as I am about Dale. At the age of 17, Dale was lost in life without purpose or direction, an only child of a broken home and living in his grandmother's attic. While being stitched up following a bloody street fight, he agreed to attend a week-long boot camp hosted by the American Legion, run by the U.S. Marines. This set Dale on a lifelong path in leadership and high performance. Following an honorable enlistment, veteran Marine Sergeant Walls returned to his small town home, where he founded an IT service company called Corsica Technologies that he led to be one of the top providers in the United States. And after 2 decades of growing Corsica to an 8-figure revenue company, congratulations, and making multiple acquisitions, Dale sold the company and founded Lions Guide. Now he spends his days fulfilling his passion to use his experience to help others learn high performance and leadership skills to apply in their own careers and lives. We have a lot of parallels there, Dale, in your story. If you want to find out more about Dale outside of this podcast, which you'll find out a lot, you can go to his website at lionsguide.com. You can also check out his amazing podcast, and not just because I am a guest, but it's called the Lions Guide Podcast. And you can follow and connect with Dale, like I did, on LinkedIn, Dale, D-A-L-E, Walls, W-A-L-L-S. So Dale, I ask everyone the same question to get us started on this ride, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Yeah, no, again, Mike, thanks for having me. And for me, it was, you touched on it a little bit. I just kind of got checked in. I grew up I jokingly say I grew up in Mayberry, right? Like, the Andy Griffith show, everyone knows everyone, almost live in black and white a little bit. And, and there's a lot of, same old, I'll say sometimes around here. And I was kind of falling in that path. And for me, I joined the Marine Corps. Long story short, joined the Marine Corps because I knew I needed to do something different. I got really attracted to the structure and the discipline. Like I say, growing up without my father in my life, finding some sort of like, I'll say authority figure even, and not that my grandmother and mother weren't that in their own way. But just finding that masculinity, maybe even, I don't know, but I was attracted to it, and it was new to me. And I was one of the first in my family. Like a lot of people join the military, who have had fathers, uncles, grandfathers, whatever that inspired them. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any exposure to the military. But at home, here in the late 90s, this time frame I was, playing around with my cousin with computers and dialing up to library systems and connecting, playing video games and stuff. So I had a little passion for that. Applied to get that job in the Marine Corps, and the rest was history. Just took off from there.
Okay, so I'm going to dig into that a little bit more, if you don't mind. So
sure.
Tell me about your your experience with your father, was he someone who was there and then gone at some point? And I just want to say that your description of your town being a little and your life being a little like Mayberry, it doesn't jive with my memory of that show. Like broken home,
Oh.
bloody street fights. I don't remember that in that show. So so what's going on there?
Yeah, no, I would say, like, when I say Mayberry, I mean, everyone knows everyone,
Yeah,
especially
okay.
at that time growing up. Everyone knew who I was the son of. The barber would catch you screwing around on the street and yell at you and what, and call your mom. Like, it was that. I grew up in really small town America, and that was a good thing. Yeah, my place in it, though, was not traditional, like you say, with Mayberry and the Beavers and all that.
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
shows back in the day. No, and my father was like every other weekend dad. There were stints that he was out of my life for a number of years at a time. And that was kind of just, like I say, a factor, and for me, left me trying to find where I wanted to go, for myself. And so, like I say, the Marine Corps kind of came in, and I literally thought, at that time, young and no exposure to any kind of U.S. service, thought everything was the Army, right? I didn't know anything about, like, the Navy and the Marines, Coast Guard, and all the different branches and all that stuff. But again, Boy State, put on by the American Legion. I haven't followed much of it today, but I believe it's still a thing. But you get this letter between your junior and senior year inviting you to come to Boy State. And like I say, it was about a week-long boot camp ish, and it did other things, other activities and stuff like that. You had to vote and do little mini campaigns and things like that. I kind of remember. But all the while, it was facilitated. American Legion was there, representatives, but also the enlisted members of the U.S. Marine Corps, and that's where I got to
Okay.
talk to some of those guys.
And this bloody street fight that I talked about in your bio, is that was that kind of like the last straw of bloody street fights, or were you like, what kind of, were you a punk? That's what I'm trying.
Yeah, kind of. Yes and no. I was just a lot of bark. All I had was my mouth and heart, and but at the same time, I knew what consequences were. So even though we were a bit mischievous around town and whatever, it wasn't ever anything that was like criminal. Like, it was just like teenage boy stuff to a degree.
Okay.
But I remember just one day at school, I was standing there with one of my best friends still through this day, and someone said something to him, and we just got after it, and the rest was history. But what it was, yes, here I was, sitting in the hospital getting stitched up. I had to get my lip stitched up, and I remember I had just gotten the Novocaine needle inside my lip, which Novocaine, if you ever had it, it's never the fun part of stitches.
No.
And the nurse or whoever had given it to me just walked out of the room, and here I just went through that suck of a whole day of suck. And my mother kind of looks at me, and I kind of remember her having, tear in her eye, kind of going, "Will you go to this Boy State?" And I guess that moment for me was like seeing what I was doing, because I wasn't doing good in school. I didn't care about school. I had the attitude that, well, no one in my family went to college. Why do I care about school? Because this is just for, my college application,
Yeah.
So I really wasn't putting forth any effort towards my potential. And this was kind of a moment where I was actually seeing that reflected back to me, that probably hadn't before, and the hurt in my mother's eyes at that time.
And how long, if you can remember, how long was it between the time that you received this letter initially and this conversation with your mom after the fight? Was it very close?
It was soon, because I
Soon.
think the fight was there at the end of the school year, and we were getting those letters because the Boy State thing happened over the summer, as a summer program.
Okay. And you, I mean, it's hard to say, right? But having your mom say this to you, um, do you think you would have checked it out if she hadn't brought it up, Dale?
Not a snowball's chance.
Not a snowball's chance. Okay, so mom had the influence to get you in there. What were you? So you said that you weren't thinking about going to college. Um, what were you thinking about prior to that letter coming along?
Honestly, I don't think I had thought that far ahead. I think I would have just fell back in line with what a lot of folks in maybe towns like this where there's not a lot of opportunity. I would have just grabbed whatever job I was doing at the time. I had a great job as far as I'm concerned, one of the best jobs I ever had, which was I was working on as a maintenance crew guy on a golf course. So from 6 to 3 every day, I'm out there just outside enjoying the outdoors, just maintaining a golf course. And it was a great job. Worked under some great superintendent and enjoyed that. In fact, that was my job mostly through high school. And I remember it was kind of heartbreaking when I went and told him I was going to go join the Marine Corps. Cause I knew I was leaving that behind. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. And you go to this boys camp. Is that the right name for it?
Boys State.
Boys State. Sorry. And what happens in there that impacts you? So I'm thinking, and I'm just going to throw this out here. This is what my mind would have been thinking like at that age. Maybe yours is the same. Maybe yours is totally different, but I'm not thinking about that at all. My mom sort of brings it up. I say, all right, okay, Mom, I'll try it. And I go in there with I would have gone in there with an attitude like, this is going to suck. I'm only doing this for her. And I'm gonna maybe, if not actively, at least passively sort of reject everything that's coming. What was your mindset like?
I don't think it was that. I had done plenty of that in many other ways before that time, I've been that guy. And I don't know that I went into Boy State with that kind of rebellious attitude towards it. I don't remember much else about Boy State. I mean, geez, that was 1997. So what is that, 23 years ago? So I don't recall, but I don't remember kind of going in that way. I think I went in a little bit open-minded. And what I do remember is you get duty, just like in the Marine Corps, you get duty, sometimes 24-hour shifts. We got little duties assigned to us. And I remember I just sat one night with the corporal that was in charge of our platoon. And he just started talking to me, as a mentor would. And that was the part I remember that got me interested in the Marine Corps.
And you mentioned before that you really didn't have an awareness of the difference between the Marine Corps, the Army. You said Army was sort of the thing. And I'll bet there are people who are listening who are like, oh yeah, I kind of know the difference, but I maybe don't really know the difference. What is the difference?
Well, the United States has multiple branches of service, and they generally most of the branch of service have all the jobs that you would find in a major city, right? And my job in the Marine Corps was IT, but in a tactical environment. The majority of my time actually I spent working on a large network out in Camp Pendleton, California, with 7,500 users on it, right? So a lot of people, if you don't know much about the military, might think, oh, you enlist, you get shipped off overseas, and you fight for 4 years. It's not really even various careers. There's lawyers, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's IT folks, right? So the military has all those jobs. For me, I joined because I don't think I joined because I wanted to be a career Marine, be there for 20 years. I definitely joined with the intention of filling in the blanks, getting a job that was going to give me some skills. And I knew I didn't want to go to college. I knew I wasn't going to have the discipline for that out of high school, even if I could. But again, I didn't come from that kind of family that, there was even savings for me to go to college. Sure. But I did get, $50,000 of college fund as a part of my enlistment. So it was probably the first time I started thinking, a couple steps ahead beyond the Marine Corps. But again, back to your question, though, there's the Army, there's the Navy, there's the Marine Corps. Marine Corps is it's treated as its own branch, but it's actually a department of the Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, all those that you hear, again, with different roles in the U.S. military arm.
Okay. And the Marines generally have the couple things. One, they have a reputation as being sort of the badasses of the group, and they also get the tough. They get the toughest assignments when it comes to battle, right? And so I'm wondering what your mom felt like after she kind of led you this way, and then you get in there. Was it all good? I mean, was she worried
I
for you,
believe
or
so. I
how?
mean, I believe to
Okay.
find and see some, I'm a big, one of my core values today is all about establishing clarity. So I think bringing some clarity to where I might go. I think, it certainly, as I think it was approached as any concern a mother might have, but at the same time, I believe the there was an appreciation for the value, and the direction, and then ultimately a sense of pride,
Mhm.
or going to earn the title, because that's what we earned the title of Marine. We're never ex-Marines, we're always Marines. And we're you'll hear Marines referred to often as the proud, because we're actually the smallest branch of the armed forces as
Mhm.
well. But we're the US's police force. We're the first ones in, and you know.
And so you talked about this fellow that I'll call a mentor, um, during that summer, and I'm wondering, like, I'm sure that continued throughout your career in the Marines, where you had, various people that you ran into, whether they were your superiors or your, um, colleagues, or whatever the proper term is. I know it's not colleagues, but brother or whatever. Who were some of the? Tell me about some of the other mentors um, that you came upon during your experience there, and what they meant to you.
Yeah, again, it was great to, and for me, and where I was in life and what I think I needed and was looking for, that started at boot camp. I mean, when you've got your drill instructors kind of, breaking you down, building you up, and leading you through, 13 weeks of boot camp. So certainly started, I think, with my drill instructors, at that time, which I had 4 of them. So we had a large platoon of 90 recruits. I think we graduated with 60. And that's 13 weeks of, discipline, but from a manner that's building, making Marines, right? We're there for transformation. Beyond that, I think that the next part of that was, once I ultimately, it certainly, again, we always have NCOs and staff NCOs in charge of us when we were junior Marines on through. So I always had some sort of direct leader that was holding me accountable, right? So yes, there was many along the way of all shapes, forms, and sizes, that one, it was their job, but two, again, I think for me, starting probably with Boy State, I was open to it. I was hungry for it. I was looking for it. And I think that's the biggest lesson I got in the Marines from those folks, was that, really challenging me to start reaching my potential. I was always intelligent. That's why I got in trouble. I saw opportunities to get in trouble, or do fun stuff, quote unquote. And kind of redirecting. And here I was then, I wasn't really a great athlete in school or anything like that. But then here I am in the Marine Corps. I'm running perfect PFTs. I'm one of the fastest guys in my platoon. It's just, they really opened my eyes to kind of start working on myself and seeing what I could become.
And you, did you know going in that you would be working in IT, or working with IT networks?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I applied for that job. And so the Marines, all the armed forces have the ASVAB test. So you go and you take that test before you enlist, and you get a score. And depending on your score is what jobs you qualify on in that respective branch.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that. And you said 90 started and 60 finished. Did you ever have thoughts of being one of the 30 that dropped out?
I really didn't know. I
Okay.
think my only concern through that process was getting injured, and you didn't just get out if you got injured; you got rolled back into medical platoon or whatever. But yeah, no, I had no concerns of that. I enjoyed boot camp. Again, I think I've said it, I'll say it again. I don't mean to be repetitive, but I think I enjoyed it. We all Marines look back on boot camp and say that was fun. But I think during it, I literally every day I remember laying in my rack and we were all in bunks and I was on the bottom and I'm looking up at the rack behind me. I'm like, another day, another day. And I just focused on one day at a time, but I really enjoyed it. Again, I'm out of my Mayberry. I'm meeting new people. I'm learning new skills. I'm outside. I'm doing, and was there the suck factor of it's boot camp and they're on you? But for me, I really was transitioning and I welcomed it, learn and drill, doing everything that we were doing. I welcomed it. I was ready for it.
And how long were you in the Marine Corps, Dale?
I did 4 years.
4 years. And if you had to describe, like maybe in a sentence or two sentences, the difference between Dale Walls the day you walked into the Marine Corps and the difference 4 years later when you walked out, what would you say?
I would say the thing that I evolved to that I benefited from most was leadership. We get taught leadership skills in boot camp, and that was something that was odd to me, and it still stuck to me, and it's still something I as kind of part of what I'm doing today is that I learned then that even as a private of Marines, and hey, sir, why are we getting taught leadership skills? We're just privates. And it was like, no matter whether you're in charge of someone else or not, you're always in charge of yourself. And that, I mean, what is self-discipline? Just that's leading oneself, basically holding yourself accountable, challenging yourself, et cetera. And so I got taught leadership skills early on, and I got promoted really quick. So I made sergeant in 2 years of my enlistment through meritorious promotions and things like that. So here I was, I was 20 years old in charge of a platoon of Marines. So that was, I was in charge of other people early, young. And I think that gave me a comfort level there. So I'm not, I was leading guys older than me, right? I had guys that were lat moving. They had been in for 4 or 8 years prior to me, but here I was in charge of them, right? And I just, I learned a lot about leadership and getting things done, even still young. And I went on to learn a lot more after, but I learned what it meant to take charge and get a mission accomplished.
Got it. And you got out, and how far after you got out was it that you started Corsica, your company?
The roots of Corsica really started while I was in the last year that I was in. It just kind of through networking and my wife's employer and things like that. I just stumbled into some opportunities to do some side hustle jobs out in town, get paid by the hour, do some projects, IT projects and whatever. Because again, if you think about the timeliness, and maybe you'll appreciate this because you were running a company through it. Here we're at 2001. Broadband's becoming accessible. With that comes Microsoft small business products that were traditionally reserved for the enterprise. And I was running an enterprise, right? I was managing a help desk and a big IT system and things like that. So when these small business owners, I'd meet them and I'd tell them what I did for the Marines, and they would hold their BlackBerry up and say, well, can you get this thing to sync up with what's on my computer? And I go, yeah, watch this, and boom, done. And I'm a hero. Right. And then that would turn into, oh, hey, can you come in my office and fix everyone else's? Or can you, none of us can print. We bought this printer and none of us in the office can. So, back then, we take for granted today our interconnectivity, but back then it was still kind of fresh. I'm talking when everything stopped being dial-up and everyone started getting BlackBerries and email. And so that was it. I had a half a dozen accounts out in town, and I was billing them by the hour. And, on the summer before I got out, my wife and I were out watching Tiger Woods. Again, back at this time, he was in his prime. He was a big thing. I was on Torrey Pines watching him play golf at an event. And I told my wife, I said, we go back home, I'm going to keep at this. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to make this official. I think I want to focus on this business. And then that August, I ended my active service, and I came back to my hometown.
So interesting. You became an entrepreneur in the Marines, essentially, right?
Yes.
The seeds were planted, and you started germinating them with a little bit of side hustle. And what was the reason that you didn't stay there? You'd already sort of, started establishing I'll call it a customer base. It's a great place. You're in the sun, you're having fun, you're young. Why go back to Mayberry?
Yeah, good question. Well, my wife and I got married at 18 and 19 years old. We were high school sweethearts. I'll save it for the love podcast, but we were love at first sight. Caught each other's eye at a Friday night football game, and the rest is history. By when I was 19, she was still 18. We got married, and she came out with me to California at that time. So we got married, spent the night in a hotel locally. Next night we were loaded up, driving across the country. And for me, I and my wife's very family oriented, and talked to her parents every night on the phone while we were gone. And for me, I was like, hey, you came away with me, let's go back home. Definitely there's a part of me, and she trumps, and I'm glad we did it. There's a part of me that left Southern California kicking and screaming, right? Every day, 70 and sunny, we had that going on, as you mentioned, with the business and stuff. But I wanted to go back home with her.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Right. You gotta balance how you want to live your life, right?
Yeah.
You want to live with a happy wife. Yeah. You want to have a good relationship. I'm curious. I meant to ask about Jody. Like, I didn't know, exactly when you got married or anything, but how was her? So for a period of time, you're not able to live off the base, I'm assuming, right? Or maybe the whole time you're there. I'm not sure, but how did that work? And because it's like get married 18, 19, and then right away you're like, I'm headed into boot camp. So this is going to be weird.
Yeah. Like say, Jody and I started dating when I was 17, she was 16. So we were in a relationship.
Okay.
I shipped off to boot camp at 18, and we got married a year later. So I was already away for about 18 months. Then we got married, and then she came away with me. And I tell people who ever ask for my advice, because we've been married 22 years in this area, I kind of go, hey, for us, the best thing that ever happened to us is we got up and got out of here, at high school. And we were forced to, here we are on the other side of the country, and all we had was each other. Obviously I had, the job in the Marine Corps, and I knew some people when she came out there. Obviously she had to find a job, but we had to grow together, right? There was no local influence. There was no running home to mom, or whatever. We were there across the country on our own. And I always felt that played a big part in us growing really strong roots together.
Oh, good point. Yeah. You had to find a life between yourselves without those, right? No relatives, friends. Yeah. Interesting. And so you decide to move back. How'd you get the company off the ground? And I'm interested because your journey, like a 20-year journey or so with Corsica, is very similar to my time frame journey with my first startup. And it's like I wonder how did you get it off the ground? How did you make it happen?
Yeah, that's why I'm enjoying your book so much, because it's fun, like say, just going through your story and kind of like say reminiscing a little bit to those times for myself. And so came back. I had a cousin who really was the one who got me into playing with the computers in the first place. He and I would play video games against each other over dial up. So today's kids, they got their Xbox, it's all plugged in, it's easy peasy. We were figuring out how to dial into each other's houses, tying up the phone line for hours, whatever. And so I did kind of have an appreciation for what he did for me in that regard. And I saw like IT can be very chicken and the egg, right? If you didn't have a job in IT, people won't hire you because you don't have experience. So how are you going to get experience if no one will hire you? And he was my first employee, because here he was doing HVAC systems at the time, very capable of doing IT work. But again, no one would give him a job because he didn't have any professional experience. So I said, hey, this is what I've been doing. I'm going to create an ad in the Yellow Pages. When people call, here's the phone number. You answer it, schedule yourself out. I'll pay you, minimum wage at the time, something like $7.50 or something like that. I'll pay you minimum wage when you're not billing. I'll pay you $15 an hour when you are billing. So he had an incentive to, get the calls done or whatever. And that was it. Put an ad in the Yellow Pages, started showing up at networking events with a business card. And he and my cousin who kind of got me interested in computers was my first employee. I worked full time while I was doing that. So I came back and got a job with a government contractor because I have clearances and so on. And so I was working full time and, like I say, put an ad in the Yellow Pages and started working on the stuff on the side.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know what the Yellow Pages are, you have to look that up. But
Yeah.
the Yellow Pages were very important back then. Like you had to, that was the only way, pre-internet, that was the only way to get noticed, right? And they charged you tremendous amount of money for even the smallest ad, it seemed like. And I just remember, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. Of course, digital marketing and all that is its own beast, but the Yellow Pages was one of those things that you kind of did because you had to do, and then you didn't know what to do with it. At least me, I didn't know what to do with it. I hope somebody calls it, but I never knew.
So in your story, you talked about picking, what was it? It was something. Was it advanced?
Yeah. Advanced waste services.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was not that smart. I know I was, but I didn't want to. But in California, the first check we got for a project, business owners like, who do you want me to write the check to? I'm like, WDIT, right? Because I didn't want it written to my name. I wanted to kind of seem more established than that. And so Wallsdale Information Technology, because I didn't like DW, it didn't sound, so WDIT. So the company in the holding still through to this day is incorporated as WDIT Inc. And so when I'm first networking and I'm going out and I would hand people my business card and it would say WDIT, and a lot of these networking events, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you're talking to, insurance salesman, the finance advisor, the real estate agent, these folks that are there to find prospects.
Right.
And so I remember I would hand out my card, and it happened to me a few times. I'd hand out my card and the guy would look at it and say, WDIT. Oh yeah, I listen to your radio station all the time. I really like it. I'm like, no, we're actually a IT services firm. And so that's how we end up changing the name to Corsica Technologies, because I was realizing everyone thought WDIT was a radio station.
Oh, that is so
so yeah, I changed, it started doing business as Corsica Technologies, Corsica being a river that runs into mouth of a river that's here in town.
Okay. And so your cousin's out and he's really the one that's doing all the work. You've got a full-time job. You're sort of, you've got the ad out there, he's answering it. What kind of traction did you get before you decided, oh, there's something here, and took the plunge? It's a hard plunge, right? That my plunge was easy. I got let go. So you're fired. Oh, okay. Well, I got to do something. Yours, I think, is a little different, maybe harder, right? Because you have this good job, you've got these government clearances, your cousin's doing the work, and you've got a distributed workforce right off the bat, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what happened to change all that?
Well, my second employee after my cousin was my wife, and that was because the calls did start coming in, and I realized pretty quick that my cousin couldn't do the calls and take the calls, and so I needed help scheduling and keeping him on track throughout the day and all that stuff to make sure everything was attended to. So that was our first move. She had a full-time job as well, and we pulled her out of that full-time job, and she started working full-time for what was then WDIT. I would say it was probably by the time we had 6 or 7 employees that I had a reflection point and said, okay, I'm doing this not even part-time, right? I'm full-time working, I'm getting this going on the back end. And I kind of had this reflection moment where I said to my partner at the time, who was also served with me in the Marines, I said, I'm looking at this and said, if we can get this much done while I'm working full time, imagine what we can get done if I gave all my time to this. And he, at this point, was working full time as well, W-2'd. And what I did was I got him, and I guess rewind a little bit, I had contracted myself into the government by this stage. So I was getting paid a 1099 rate to fuel the business. So I was paying myself a salary and using the extra profits to fund the business. And so what I did was I went to my partner and said, hey, look how far we've come by both of us being, doing it on the side. I said, how about you come over and take my spot on this contract? I'll go back full time because, another part that we haven't mentioned is I started this business thinking I was going to get on the service disabled veteran owned business set aside, because back at that time, President Bush had put forth some bills that said, and I believe they're still in effect as law today, that 3% of all government contract work was supposed to go to service disabled veteran owned firms. That was us. And realized that, sure, although the government contract business was there and that set aside was there, at this time, early 2000s, the small and medium business side of our business was just beating our door down. So having to go write these big 3-ring binder proposals to win government work, while all this commercial small and medium business were literally beating down our door for our services, we pivoted real quick and stayed focused on that. And so I pulled myself out. I put my business partner in. So now he's full-time employed by the business at this point. I pulled out of the billable role and went back and started growing the team. And then we grew it, did the same thing, pulled him out, actually employed someone to go into that spot, and kept growing the business from there.
And when you, so I'm curious about your leadership growth here and track. So you mentioned what it was like in the Marines, how, between the time you went in and the time you came out, I asked you, what was the biggest difference? And you said, you talked about your leadership skills. And now I'm wondering, you've got 6 or 7 people as an early startup. Well, first of all, as a startup, hard, 6 or 7 people, difficult, especially while you're employed somewhere else. What kind of a challenge was it to your own leadership skills and growth during that period, if you can remember? I'm just really curious about that.
Well, I had to learn, and again, I often got to put these things in perspective, right? I got out of the Marine Corps at 22 years old, and I was a platoon sergeant at 22 years old in the Marine Corps, which is a high performing,
a big deal,
entity, right? Like we go hard. And I think the first number of years I had to learn was that everyone wasn't a Marine, and couldn't take, that type of leadership. And again, I don't even say that to kind of stereotype all Marines as being hard asses or whatever. I know, like, my tact was not that great, as far as getting stuff done. And certainly, so I had to mature in leadership to learn, like, emotional intelligence and culture and all these things that as a young 20 something, I didn't quite get yet. And I had to grow to learn that. Just understand what it meant, what I'll say senior leadership means, right? Because you can be put in charge of things and go get things done. And I think that's kind of my role in the Marine Corps, getting promoted early and and so on. But to be in charge of people's lives in the capacity of owning a business is another type of leadership that you have to understand. You're hiring people. You can fire people. I couldn't fire people in the Marine Corps. I could take them out back and make them do push-ups and whatever and do the things a sergeant could. But, hiring and firing was something that I felt that I learned a lot about, something that you couldn't take lightly and just kind of hire anyone and because those are life-changing events, right? When you hire someone, you're changing someone's life, and when you fire someone, you're changing someone's life. I think I had to grow into that type of leadership, understanding, the influence I had, and that here I am starting this business and I've got employees that look up to me. So I might not be thinking about their feelings, but they are, and my words pack a punch. And I had to learn that, that running through the office, like, hard charging Sergeant Walls isn't going to work for these guys. Some of them were vets, they got it, and whatever. But I had to understand that from a cultural perspective, as an example. Influence, sales, all these sales, marketing, presence, networking, all these other things I had to learn.
I'm glad you used, you mentioned words, because it seems like, one, leaders often misunderstand or don't fully comprehend how much meaning what they say has to other people. And you can say something just sort of flippant, sort of off the cuff, that means nothing to you. And the person hearing it, it means a tremendous amount to them,
Yeah.
So it's a real skill, like a real self-awareness skill, to finally get that one day, because you don't want to say anything that's going to be misinterpreted. You want everything to be intentional. And sometimes it really takes a mind matrix that works very quickly in order for you to protect that, and make sure that your messaging is always positive for your team, or it has the appropriate clarity, like to use your word, and is not just something where you're like, oh, that's not really what I meant. Don't worry about that, because people don't unremember something.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. They don't remember something.
Well, there's that saying, right, that they don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel, as an example, and
Right.
you got to know as a leader, you swing a heavy stick, and even joking around. Like I'm a clown sometimes. I like to joke around. In Marine Corps, we're giving each other a hard time all the time. And I had to know, right? Like they employees take that differently from a boss out in town.
Yeah. And it's one thing to have conversations, certain joking conversations with your buddies somewhere, where that's all there is there. And that's everybody knows the environment, and then, slip and do something like that with other people. How many people, so 6 or 7, you came on full time, you built the business over 20 years. What did it look like at the 20-year mark when you decided to sell it, Dale? And how much had you changed during that 20-year period?
Yeah. So over the course, so like I say, started as a sole proprietorship in 2001. By 2010, I had done a few smaller acquisitions here in the area. But I came across some other partners that we ended up doing a bit of a merger of equals with a firm in New York City. And that was truly like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of deal. And, had my own capacities. If you ever read Michael Gerber's E-Myth, talks about the founder's cap, and you can only get so much done with these own 2 hands. And I was fortunate enough to come across some partners through some connections in the industry that were kind of hitting the same thing. But I had a winning formula. I was doing great things down here in Maryland. These guys were trying to break into that industry, having a little bit of success. But we got connected up, talked about it, and said, okay, well, if I can do what I'm doing here in Mayberry, what can I do with this formula in Manhattan? And so we got together, we all split hats. So where it was myself and my partner from the Marine Corps, now we picked up 2 other partners. The president of that company became the CFO. The other partner up there became our customer service, customer relations guy, and lead sales guy in that market and stuff like that. And it was really a great, again, sharing of hats and a lot of respect between each other for our responsibilities. I always appreciated those guys. Like we were all kind of like alpha leaders to an extent, but like, I always felt like these guys gave me the respect and said, Dale, hey, if, this is how I feel about it, but you're the CEO. If that's what you think we should do, I'm on board. Right. And I always appreciated that of those guys, and always try to maintain that, back to, when you're the CEO, your word, you can use that. It can be, weaponized to your position, stuff like that, to get what you want. And I felt like out of respect for their respect for me, And again, the impacts of the decisions I would make as CEO on these guys, right? These were their companies that they had built too. It was always important to me to keep that respect of them, keep, earn that title to be their CEO. And so over that course of time, by the time we sold the business to a private equity group, we were 60 employees, 60, 65. And then over the course of the following 18 months, I stayed on as CEO, and through larger acquisitions, we grew it to 200 people right prior to COVID. And we were staffed for growth. But when COVID hit, we did downsize by about 30 positions at that time.
Okay. And how, I don't know if difficult is the right word, how extensive were the conversations with these two fellas whose company you merged with, that about you being the CEO? Because you mentioned, sort of 4 alpha people, they had started their own business, you started your own business, you come together. In your mind, you see, oh, okay, this is 1 + 1 = 3. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's one thing. And then actually deciding, say, who's going to make the ultimate call on what's going to happen with the businesses is sometimes kind of another. So how did you work through that process?
Honestly, that I think kind of fell in line. I think we all were pieces that fit in our respective holes. And the president of that company, Larry Fryman, who I'm still close with today, as an example, kind of recognized that I had the formula, right? I had the formula. I was bringing my formula into the city. And he was really good at managing the things I needed help with, because, the other thing, even about school, the only education I had, I actually did primarily accounting in school. For another funny story for why I wasn't allowed to touch computers in high school, but my curriculum through high school was accounting, so I knew the books. So being able to offset that on someone else who really was passionate about it, Larry is cash flow king. He knew how to manage our books well, and he came in and cleaned up all our debt, and just really had a well-oiled machine efficiently, financially. But I think even our initial conversations, I think it was always, I don't recall at all there even being a conversation as if I wasn't going to be the CEO of the combined entity.
And for 10 years, you all stayed together until the sale, which is, I think, amazing and unusual enough from what I've seen to indicate that there was something special between the 4 of you. It was either, that you all had your lanes and you were happy in your lanes, which is, there's a lot of times when people have their lanes, but they're not happy in their particular lanes. So you manage, and significant growth too after it. So you managed to, sounds like, each respectively pick some good partners to
I would agree to that. Yeah. And the funny thing was, and those of you guys out there in business, listen to this, probably laugh at this too. I know we laugh about it, especially Larry and I. It was like a shotgun wedding. I met in, I believe, January. Larry called me. He got my contact info, called me. We had a call in January. He kind of told me about the thought of, merging and things like that, like how I could come help those guys up there and what they were trying to do with what I was already doing. By April, we had fully integrated books and everything. And then we settled on the merger in June. Right. So we totally shotgun wedding it. Like, we integrated our business. And this is, talks a little bit, I think, to the entrepreneurial, we were all get stuff done guys. So even though there was like stuff that needed to happen legally, documentation wise, administratively, and all that stuff, like, we met each other. We said, yep, this is a good idea. We figured it out, and we integrated before we even inked the deal. We were integrated and operating, and it was just kind of a joke when we would be on the phone talking to our lawyers and accountants and kind of well, haha, we already took care of that. The books are already merged. Like, it was weird to them, but to us, we just wanted to go. We saw the opportunity and we wanted to get it done. We had it done. We just needed those guys to put their seal of approval on it.
Okay. That reminds me of like the ready, fire, aim. Like we knew where we were going. We just,
Yeah.
that's all that stuff's just a formality.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. Exactly right. That's the way we treated it anyway. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
So I can't go past the not allowed to use a computer as in high school thing reference you made there. What happened?
So my same cousin that was my first employee, we figured out how to get into the system in school. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I knew what consequences were, so we weren't getting there changing grades or doing anything like that, but we did kind of own the system. We knew how to get what we wanted out of it. And what all we wanted was to load our games, because we were playing over dial-up, but we realized if we could install our gaming network on the school system, we'd have all this, computer power and high speed or local network, high speed and all that stuff. So we basically had, first player shooter games loaded in the school's network behind the scenes. No one knew about it. Well, those of us who were playing knew about it. I even had teachers playing on it at one point. They would stay after school and play with us.
That's good to include some of the enemy, right?
Yeah, exactly. They didn't know, but they were kind of like, how'd you do that? And anyways, so there was a way to get into the back end of the system. There was a way to get out of it so you wouldn't get caught. And I think one of us were not going to be there one day and taught a novice how to get in, but he didn't get out properly and caused the issue. And I remember coming into school, I was kind of got a call down to the principal's office. We were a decent sized school, like a 4A school. So there was a principal and like 4 vice principals. And I remember getting called down to the principal's office. And I go in this conference room attached to the principal's office. And there's the principal, the 4 vice principals, the 3 librarians, the 2 IT guys from the Board of Education. And there I am, have a seat, and just kind of had to own it, say what was going on, what we had done. And so I didn't get any trouble, but I wasn't allowed to have classes that had a computer in it. And again, this is 97-ish. And I wasn't allowed to have classes with computers in it. So I had to take my typing class on a typewriter. And then I changed all my classes that had to be on a computer. I changed them to accounting. And accounting at that time, this is like pre-QuickBooks. At least that's not what they're teaching us in school. I learned accounting on the green ledger style stuff.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I knew what debits and credits were, because you had to know what they were, because you had to put it on the right side of the register and all that stuff. I don't know if you dealt with any of that.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That just brought back a memory I had forgotten. Yes.
Yeah. So that's how I learned accounting. So I took, 3 semesters of accounting in high school. So I knew that side of business. I knew the accounting side, which I think I was fortunate to know that stuff getting, when I started the business.
Okay. And that was handled at the local level then. No one else got involved. The school told you this is what we're going to do. And that was that.
Talking about when I got caught. Yeah. No, I don't think any of us got in any real trouble, because we didn't do anything malicious or damaging,
Yeah.
It was,
yeah. You were just using some power.
Yeah, exactly.
So Dale, when you sold the business, congratulations, you stayed on for a while, and then something took over in you, where you decided, I've got a different mission in life than IT services, or running these kinds of businesses, even though you've been super successful doing it, which is the kind of shift that, again, a lot of people don't make. You start in something, you do well with it, you sell it, you do well with it, and then you're like, well, how can I do more of that? And you decided instead to go a different direction with Lions Guide. How did that come about?
I would say, like, especially in the last 18 months, when the company really accelerated as far as it being an organization, right? So when we sold and we're like 60 employees, that's whatever, I'm managing a small team. But when the company grew the way it did, and we bought multiple other companies of the same size and integrated them, and we were regional, now we're spreading across the country, true organizational leadership was the new requirement, right? I wasn't managing a small team in 2 markets anymore with my partners. Now I had 7 direct reports as a CEO, right? So now I've got a real CFO. No offense to Larry, but Larry was the president of a small business just like me. He wasn't a real CFO who's doing modeling and all that stuff that now we were required. So he gracefully bowed out early after acquisition, just because, he knew that he wasn't a CFO that they needed, a great controller at that level, right? He would be a great controller, but the CFO was like another echelon of financial management, right?
Yeah, sure.
And analysis, and Excel work, right? Or yeah. So, so here I was, it went from running this small business operation to managing leaders who are running their divisions. And so I really enjoyed that, and I think, like, for me, even the service of IT, I've never been the stereotypical like IT nerd, right? Like I'm not like salivating over the next technology coming out. I've never really been that guy. What I got out of it, my sense of fulfillment, was learning this stuff and helping small businesses with it, right? Like, I knew how to solve their problems. I knew how to make their business go faster. I knew how to help them scale their business with technology. That's why I did the business, right? That was my fulfillment, not the tech. It was the
Right.
result of the tech.
Okay.
That shifted at this point from leadership. Now I wasn't in tech anymore. I was in leadership. I was helping them manage their teams better. I was helping them sustain, right, and persevere. And I after exiting the company and kind of getting challenged on what I was going to do next by someone who thought I was aiming too small for what my story was and what my capabilities were, I realized that just like what I enjoyed out of IT, which was delivering a result by way of IT, I realized that for those last 18 months of running Corsica at a larger organizational level with those 200 people, I really enjoyed serving my direct reports and helping them sustain, because being a leader is hard work. Being an organizational leader, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, you got to be a high performer. It takes a lot out of you. You've got to be able to sustain. You've got to learn. There's no one thing, everyone's got the one thing book or the 3 habits book and all. No, it's everything. Everything you do matters. And if that's your energy levels, that's your time management, and people always came to me kind of asking me, inquiring, like, Dale, I don't get it. You're growing this business. Your wife's still with you. You got 3 young kids at home. You're still running marathons. You're doing jujitsu. You're coaching the youth football team. Oh, now you're a president of the local youth association. I don't get how you do that. And I would just kind of start talking to them about that. And like, say, not always on a personal development level, but also on a professional development level with my direct reports. But that was kind of like what people would come to me about. And I realized, like, I enjoyed those conversations, talking about the books I read. I read, about 40 to 60 books a year because I have a dedicated hour a day I read. And a fellow podcaster called me a book pharmacist at one point. Kind of, we were talking about just drop-in wisdom that from all my reading, and that's kind of what I would do. Like, with my direct reports, they would come to me with a problem. I would go, hey, go grab this book. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Here's the quick, too long didn't read version. But I was like this book pharmacist. So I really enjoy helping people with my experience and knowledge. And today I want to help other people that are on the same path that I took, as an entrepreneur to a business owner to an organizational leader, all of which require you to be a high performer. And because we see the burnout, we see the poor leadership out there. We don't understand why our troops or people don't respect us, or, and there's no employee engagement. Just there's so much there. And today, just like with the IT side, I enjoy taking what I've learned, what I've read, and helping impart that and help others thrive and really enjoy doing what they're doing, because that's where the burnout comes. They're just not, enjoying it because of the requirement to be a high performer as a leader today.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you go in, like in my book, I talk about the dream stage and then the grind stage and then the broke stage, right? So you get into it for these great reasons, and then the business can just take over. It can take over, and then it can challenge you in all kinds of ways you never ever anticipated. And without some help, like the kind of help that it sounds like you're providing, without that help, without that continuous learning, and without constant confidence rebuilding, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge to keep going, and to keep going in a meaningful way. Like anyone can keep going, like keep showing up, like, well, you have to show up, right? But it's what you do, or what you're able to do when you show up. That's what makes the big difference. And I love how you talk about energy, because if you don't have the right energy, and if you're not right, like, I won't even limit it to energy. If you're not right, things aren't going to be right.
Yep.
Just the way it is.
The only way I could sum that up to people I talk to today is like, your business, your team will only grow as much as you're willing to grow, right? When you say, this is as far as I'm going, that's as far as your business is going to go. That's as far as your team's going to go, as far as your results are going to go. So there's this constant growth requirement. I think I tell people today, like, sometimes we look for that. This is advice I give to new parents, right? They'll say they just had the baby, and they kind of like, well, as soon as he's out of diapers, as soon as he's eating solid food, as soon as he's going to school, like they see these little milestones that there's these markers where things are going to get easier. It never gets easier. And you got to know that, and you just got to be willing to grow and be ready to grow through that next stage every way. And business is the same way. You'll get a lot of fulfillment out of it. Hopefully you can make money out of it. But if you're doing it right, it's never going to get easier to the capacity that you can't keep growing, that you don't need to keep growing. As that business grows and the demands are on you. And look, this isn't grow to be able to do it all, but you have to, I work with business owners today as an example. You've grown to a point that now you need to grow to learn how to delegate the business management piece, right? Like, as entrepreneurs and startups, we're that hero leadership. We're doing everything. We can spin all the plates. We can, the success of the day is no balls got dropped, right? But a business can only go so far with that. And that's why, like, I call them out separately. I work with entrepreneurs who are working to get to that point, and then I work with business owners who are hitting that point. These are both transformational times. When you're starting, you've got to change, because it's a grind, it's a hustle. You're gonna have to put in more work than you put in your W-2 job, I promise you, right? And then when that business grows, now you have to grow and learn how to delegate, how to firm up your processes, how to do the right things by the business. And as an organizational leader, same thing, when you're running large teams. So they all require a growth, high performance mindset.
Yeah. And I like how you said that, you're always going to work more than you did for your W-2. And I think people really, if you're going to get into this game, whether it's, and I do want to ask you what your definition difference is between entrepreneur and business owner, just so I'm clear on that. But let me finish this. If you're going to get into this, and you're going to believe some of the stuff you read and see, where people are going, oh, you're going to work 10 hours a week and you're going to crush it, and you're going to blah, and you're going to do all this stuff. And I think to myself, maybe that happens. So I'm not one to say it never happens. It probably happens, but it probably happens like someone like Kim Kardashian becomes famous. It doesn't happen very often. What does is it's very sexy, right? And so if I can sell you the fact that you can do this, even though you probably can't, it's a sexy sale. Like, who wouldn't want to buy that, right? Nobody wants to buy, you mean I'm going to have to work 10 times, 3 times, 4 times as hard as I did on my W-2 job? I'm not sure. But it's going to be that way no matter what. So no matter what somebody's selling you, that's what it's going to be. Dale, what is the difference in your mind between business owner and entrepreneur?
Yeah, in my mindset, when I say entrepreneur, I'm talking about the folks who have earned their first 2 years of business. I think once you get past that 2-year mark now, and you have a business, it's operating, it's a thing, it's not it's producing. I feel now you're a business owner, you own an asset that's producing revenue. And then separate aside, an organizational leader maybe doesn't own a business or is an entrepreneur, but I would never leave those folks out, that being some sort of manager in an organization does not have the same high performance requirements.
Oh, it does for sure. Right. Yeah. That's what you're saying. And what the name Lion's Guide, where did that come from?
I feel like one of my philosophies is all around courage. And I feel like, a lot of my success in life has come from the times that I was courageous, starting a business, joining the Marines, going into, going from Mayberry to Manhattan, I've had successes when I've demonstrated courage. I've had failures when I've let my fears get the best of me, my doubts. And so the Lion's Guide piece of it, the lion, I wanted to embody that spirit and the brand of courage. And the lion also symbolizes leadership as well, and other things, but which are important to me. And then the guide piece of it is that I know what I know. I know my story. I know what I went through as an experience. And people will ask me certain specifics, and I go, look, I know what I do, how I do these things, and I can help you, but I have a formula that works for me. And that may have worked for me at a time and place. So I don't want to pass any presumptions that what has worked for me will work for anyone else. I want to guide people to my experience, my knowledge, and the wisdom I picked up along the way. I want to serve as a guide, because that's what I would find out in the streets before I would start doing this. Like, again, I would say, hey, go grab this book. Well, it's not my book. I didn't come up with it. I learned something from it. So I'm just guiding people to that information. I'm trying to guide them to the best version of themselves for what they want to accomplish.
Okay. I thought, when I look at you with your mustache and your beard and everything, it sort of seems lion-y to me a little bit, like a lion's mane kind of thing. So I thought
it doesn't hurt the brand. No, sure.
From Mayberry to Manhattan. I love that. Really do. Well, Dale, this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed talking to you again after you had me on your podcast, which was very generous of you. Thank you. And thank you for volunteering to go into the Marines. And I know you did it for you first, it sounds like, but I know that but by doing that, you've had a tremendous impact on so many others, including me and everybody listening. And then making that transition to becoming an entrepreneur and building that company over 20 years, and now shifting again and taking that 20 years of experience plus the 4 years in the Marines, and offering that to other people who are just getting started or are not as far down the road on their journey is just it's just a phenomenal contribution to be making to entrepreneurs and to the world. And I thank you for doing it.
Appreciate the support. Thank you, Mike.
I mentioned your websites and stuff at the beginning. Is there anything else you want to share with people in terms of getting a hold of you or connecting with you? Or
yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Like as mentioned, you can go to lionsguide.com. I do a free members area where, I put out free videos and content that I put together. Again, usually questions, like I'm working with clients. If I hear a theme, I'll record a training video and put that out there. So next time it comes up, I go, hey, go out to the members area and check that out. So I've got stuff like that out there for free. And that's it. I'm doing one-on-one coaching, engagements. I'm doing high performance leader workshops where it's another group of high performance leaders of those, like say, entrepreneurs, business owners, and organizational leaders that we each week circle up and go through different high performance tactics, operations, mindsets, things like that, and all grow together.
Nice. All right. Well, Dale, congratulations. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Mike, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the How'd It Happen podcast, where we believe that success doesn't happen unless you make it happen. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. And while you're there, please rate it and leave a comment as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show, ideas for future guests, or whatever you'd like to share. And of course, you can always find me at MikeMalatesta.com. See you next time. Thanks again for listening to the How Did It Happen podcast.